What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
It's us.
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it. The fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing the Gap podcast with Truth About Black Wealth. Tune in here, V94.9, and on your favorite YouTube channels, Closing the Gap. And also, you can check us out on any podcast outlet that you receive your podcast. I am your co-host, Eddie Richardson, sitting here with Mr. Wilbur Hamilton, our host and business owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors. And we're coming to you today, and here we are in Black History Month.
Yes, sir.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And we're always grateful for this opportunity to be able to speak to you all as a public. And we just strive to give you some good information and dive into some things that we need in our community so that we can continue to build the wealth and close the wealth gap and do what we need to do to strive in this economy that we're in. So we've been talking about insurance on the last episode, and we dove into that. And today we want to talk about how we can build wealth through a wealth driver and creating wealth. One of the main things is marriage.
Absolutely.
And we definitely need more of our young men, young women, marrying one another. And so we want to talk about the importance of that today. And if you can, I'll let you dive in. What's the first thing that you want to talk about when it comes to marriage being one of the biggest wealth drivers for the African-American community?
Well, first of all, definitely, it's always a blessing to be here. And, the simple and plain is 2 is better than 1. I mean, first and foremost, we always started the new year with a budget. And like I said, we're going to write it down to make it plain. And, and simple and plain as it is, if you making money and your spouse is making money, well, that's 2 incomes coming in. That's one set of expenses hopefully going out. So you got one mortgage or one rent, you got one power bill, you got one cable bill, you got one water bill, you got one gas bill. So now you can partake together in the fruits of your labor going out into just one set of household bills. So it should help you be able to save a little bit more. So those, income and expenses should be in a better situation with sharing the load. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, of course. Your household is your household, but that's where you sit it down and create a plan and a financial plan in your house. And of course, we talked about everybody individually setting their own plan, but obviously, if you got a spouse, significant other, that needs to sit down and come together and have a family plan.
Okay.
So with having that plan and having the understanding of who's going to handle what, are you going 50-50? Is he paying the mortgage and she paying the insurance or whatever your system is? Making sure you got one.
Okay.
Making sure you have a good, firm understanding of who's going to take care of what, because now that gives you the ability to hopefully fast track the financial planning process, because you have someone that's not only operating as an accountability partner, but someone who can help contribute to building and establish some wealth for your family. So, we got to make sure that, it's not just the husband that got insurance, we need to make sure the wife has insurance as well. And I think all too often, we go into the process of, being a little bit of self-centered in a way. And, we're taking care of ourselves and we're creating our own little financial plans, and everybody got their own little budget and they're saving and their spending habits. And, when you're trying to file those taxes, they ask you, how you filing. Are you married filing separately? Are you married filing jointly? So we want to understand.
Who's head of the household and
exactly
questions on there.
Yeah, and there's no necessarily right or wrong answer, but it's what works best for you.
Correct.
And it's having a plan, having guidance, and sitting down and creating, like I said, that budget, and then having a firm idea of how much you can afford to save together. Because at the end of the day, when we get to retirement and the way our tax code works, when you're married filing together, his income affects your income and vice versa. So when you go into retirement, you start pulling your pension and she start pulling her 401k and you start pulling your Roth account and you pulling, from your IRA, all that's taxable household income outside of the Roth.
Okay.
And having that taxable income coming in, that means that his income affects you and yours affects his. So, understanding that needs to help guide us in the financial planning process, because what someone else does will affect the other. And I think all too often we kind of get, in our own little world and we say, well, my retirement's taken care of. Well, I got my pension, or he has his retirement on the job. And I'm like, no. His retirement is going to affect yours and vice versa. How do you properly plan within that? Making sure you ask the question, baby, did you sign up for that insurance on the job? How much coverage did they give you on the job? Have y'all sat down together? Because, we all did a little bit of a self-assessment. We were going through things and we're looking at, okay, well, I know I got this. I know I got that. Well, I got this much at work. I got this much, on the job. Or I had this much before we got married. Or my mama set this up for me when I was a kid. And I know I have this. But if you ask a person, what does their spouse have? Usually they draw a blank. And unfortunately, that's not the way to properly plan. And because it leaves gaps and holes in the wealth building process. We don't want to be in a situation where, you plan and you are doing the right thing. You got your insurance coverage in place. You're saving for retirement. You're investing. But you haven't had that uncomfortable conversation with your spouse to see if they're doing the same. And God forbid something happens and you're in a situation where they didn't take out the insurance on the job. They didn't, have a separate policy, or they let their policy lapse that you thought they had, 2 years ago. And now something has happened and it's too late.
Okay.
So just sitting down and doing that self-check and that is great. But, when you have joined together as one, you truly have to operate as one. So you have to make sure that, one hand knows what the other is doing and that you're working together and not against each other. So.
Okay. That's good. And what I hear you saying is you have to synergize financially.
Absolutely.
When two are working together. It's teamwork. Yep. Now, and we also understand that all of our listeners are not necessarily married, but when it comes, we are, this show, Closing the Gap. We tell the truth about Black wealth. And the truth about Black wealth is that marriage is a major wealth driver to closing the gap here in financial situations. We know that some of you have gotten divorces, some of you have not married, and that's okay, right? We're also going to give you some tools to go forward as well. But we just felt it important, imperative that we speak to those that are married and to some that will plan on getting married and how they can set aside and build a wealth in the household for the community. Because Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor.
Yes.
So Will, when you're talking about those financial synergies, what I hear you talking about is shared living expenses and how combined incomes can increase household purchasing power. It increases investment power. Also, you get access to better health options and based on which spouse has the better plan at their employer. Also, you talked about filing taxes and potential tax benefits for couples and based on where their incomes are, what kind of things will go on. But then you also touched on risk management, where you need to know, we talked about last week about insurances, right? You need to know what type of insurance policies you have and what you need to have covered for your home. And then also when we talk about risk management, we talk about 2 incomes providing a safety net if one partner loses their job.
Absolutely.
I had a discussion with a couple of my younger clients in the barbershop on this past week. And they were talking about how they were able to get jobs to work at home and things like that, and how they were planning to sit down with their wives and talk about how they can move forward. And so can you talk about the importance of long-term planning when it comes to marriage and husbands and wives?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's imperative. One of the things you touched on, I mean, that's sorely overlooked a lot of times is the benefit of, the health insurance that the spouse may cover. I live that, me being an entrepreneur and a business owner, my wife working in the school system, she's been the beneficiary of having great insurance, but also she has the benefit of having a pension. So what that's done for, our family is giving us some flexibility where I can say, look, you're going to be in the system for at least 20, 25 years. You're going to have a pension. You're saving it to your retirement account. She carries the good insurance. So I've always been the beneficiary of her insurance. The kids have always been on her insurance. So
The same.
It's a good situation to be in because what it allows me to do, or has allowed me to do, is be a little bit, I would say, riskier from a business standpoint, from a financial standpoint, because my wife provides the stability from a health insurance standpoint, from a retirement planning standpoint, because she's going to have a guaranteed set amount of income coming in. It's allowed me to be, to invest a little bit more aggressively with me being the business owner. So, having a plan and having some stability within the plan. So we always want to have that solid foundation. And luck for me, my wife has been that foundation, for helping us, to be successful in allowing me the opportunity to go out and take certain risks. But with and I always tell people, we kind of got to understand and define wealth, because in our community, we really haven't had wealth. We've had some very rich individuals, and, for me, wealth transcends generations. And why that's so important and why marriage is such a key component to that is when we look at other communities, they've had wealth to transcend generations. We hear about, you look at the Ford family that owns the Detroit Lions, that team has been passed down from generation to generation. Look at the Lakers. They pass on from one generation to the next. You look at all the major sports franchises, all the big, Fortune 500 companies and Walmart and all these places, they're all businesses, and that wealth is being passed from generation to generation. Well, we're yet to have that generational wealth. I had this conversation one time, and I was telling a group of individuals I was speaking with, I said, we haven't had any wealthy African-American families yet. And they said, well, we have some wealthy. Well, Oprah's wealthy, and Michael Jordan is wealthy, and, Bob Johnson is wealthy. I said, yeah. I said, but until that wealth touches the next generation, they're extremely rich, because Oprah didn't have any kids that I'm aware of. So her wealth is going to be dispersed amongst a number of different charities. Now, the money doing good is completely different from transcending generations within her lineage. In the fact that she's going to affect the great deal of number of people doing positive work. So, of course, we watched Michael Jordan go through a divorce. We go from being a billionaire to, in a divorce, and overnight, you losing 40% of that. He goes from being worth over like $1.1 billion down to $600 million. Now, still a very rich individual, but now he's going from wealthy to rich again. One change in the marital status of any of these individuals, Bob Johnson will do the same thing. He was one of the first black billionaires owning the Charlotte Hornets, who actually Michael Jordan was able to get the team from. He went through a divorce, lost half of what he had. So, until this wealth transcends to the next generation and we continue to pass it down and we create some everlasting change, and we have some of those staples like we hear about the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts and all these families that have been in a very positive financial position, the Bushes and, and now the Trumps. I mean, they've had wealth that's transcended generations, and we understand that marriage was one of the foundational principles in that. And being able to plan and prepare and see that wealth go on to your kids and your kids' kids. So definitely just thinking that way. People perish through the lack of knowledge and understanding the roles and responsibilities certain entities play within the financial landscape, understanding the power and benefits of marriage. When you inherit money, it's different from spouse to spouse than it is from spouse to children or significant others. There's different tax ramifications that come into that. So I think that's one of the keys. And I think, I want to just make sure people understand, especially for our community, because I think we're at a crossroads where we're going to start to see some wealthy families. We just haven't had it happen just yet, just due to, I would say space and time. Yeah. But we just want to be cognizant of that and understand the true power of marriage, because sometimes they get lost in this world, becoming very selfish and materialistic, where everybody has I'm going to get it on my own type of mentality, and nobody gets it on their own. All of us have success by partnership, working together. Sharing truly is caring. The more I give, the more I receive. What you sow. So, God loves a cheerful giver. We want to be, cheerful like giving. If you give out to him, he'll give it back to you tenfold. So those are just some basic things that I definitely wanted to kind of touch on. But just from a risk management standpoint, understanding that, we've all been in good and bad places in our life financially. We've all had bumps in the road and had learning lessons and things that happened.
Correct.
I remember one time I was going out to buy, I was getting my first car, and they were doing a credit check. And they said, hey, Mr. Sanders, you had something pop up on your credit report. I'm like, okay. What is it? They said, well, you have a collection item for a a piece of medical equipment. I'm like, well, I haven't had any medical equipment. I don't know what you're talking about. And, did a little research and dive into it, and come to find out, I had a knee surgery in college, and they fitted me for a special knee brace. Well, some kind of way, the insurance company and the university and my, parents' insurance cover is supposed to cover, the cost of the knee brace. Somewhere along the line, somebody dropped the ball.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, that trickled down to me. And, luckily, I was in a position where you got a spouse with good credit. While you're fixing your situation and getting things cleaned up, having someone there that can be that cosigner, having someone there that can be the beneficiary of, that you can be the beneficiary of their, sound planning, that's a plus. So, we need marriage because, all of us need a cosign every now and then.
Yes.
All of us need some help. So, us knowing the situation that the other is in and knowing that, okay, one of us got to always have good credit. Hopefully both of us got good credit so we could be working together. But just those small things that we tend not to think about, they become a little bit of taboo in our community. We got to start having those discussions.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's excellent. Having a discussion, having open communication about our finances, having open communication about our desires of where we want to go, and being able to put those together. Marriage marries our ideas and our plans and our visions into one, right? And sometimes we, like you said, we want to stay in our silo. We want to get with the mate just for some reasons, but we don't want to be fully committed sometimes. And so what we want our audience to realize is that in order to truly build wealth and for yourself and for our community is get away from selfish desires and let's unite man and woman together to be able to have the greater impact in society.
Absolutely.
As you stated also about those different robber baron families, the Rockefellers and these different persons as they got married and passed the wealth down to their children and the children's children and the children's children, right? Even scripture talks about that. These are the things that come down to estate planning.
Absolutely.
Right. And I would tell our audience is that while you may feel that you don't have enough money to do estate planning, I would tell you that yes, you do, because you as a person will have the potential to pass down wealth to your children if you have any. And when we talked on last week and we talked about the different insurances that you can get, that's a way to plan your estate.
Yeah.
If you own a home, that home is a part of your estate. Anything that you own or have is a part of your estate. So what we want you to do is value every single item that you have, and let's lay out an estate planning that includes inheritance rights and tax advantages. And this is where it's important to come and see somebody like Mr. Hamilton as you look at your life, as you look at your planning. And like I said earlier, we may have some people that listen that are married. We have some people that have been divorced. We have some people that are single and are not looking to be married. But wherever you are, right, and whether you have kids or, like you stated, we're not 100% sure whether Ms. Winfrey has children or not, but all of us have financial wealth that we can pass down to build a state that can impact our society. Because what we do here on this podcast is we're looking to tell the truth about Black wealth so that we can close the wealth gap. And what I will say to those of you that are single that also have finances and have an estate, what you also can look into doing is that what happens with a lot of education and nonprofits is people sign up that money to benefit those places. Just like you said, some Oprah and these people, they will end up laying out their finances that they will make an impact for the greater good of the community. And that's how a lot of colleges pass out scholarships and things of that nature is through that. So wherever you are in life, whether you're married, whether you're single, whether you're divorced, whether you're looking to be married, at some point, we want you to build your estate, look at your plan, understand your finances, lay out some good financial goals, have sound financial management practices. And when you do that, come and see Mr. Hamilton to build that plan, or find somebody that is licensed to do the work for you. We'll see you back after this commercial. Welcome back to Closing the Gap, Truth About Black Wealth. I am Eddie Richardson here with our host, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton, owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors. You're tuning in to V94.9, and we're glad to have you and glad to have the opportunity to speak to you. We are here now. This is Black History Month.
Absolutely.
It's Black History Month, and we know that some of the history, well, we won't say that we know, but we won't take it for granted that everybody knows.
Absolutely.
But we're here to educate and talk about some things. And so, Carter G. Woodson established Negro History Week back in 1926 when he realized the importance of, having a thing for people to focus on. You always need somebody to put forth an idea to keep everybody, to guide people.
Absolutely.
Right? And no matter, when you're reading a news article, usually the title of the news article is what's going to guide you.
Absolutely. Give you some insight.
Give you some insight. And so that's essentially what Carter G. Woodson was saying. Hey, okay, I want us to focus for this week on Black history, right? And then it ended up turning into a month. And many of us, we as African Americans, we strive to do it year round, and that's good. But it's always good that this month is set aside for this. And so the thing that the Association for the Study of African American Life and History has set for this year, 2025, is African Americans in labor. And we just finished talking about marriage being a wealth driver, and we read the scripture about two being better than one because when they're together, they have a good reward for their labor.
Absolutely.
Right? And when we talk about labor, we're talking about working together. And African Americans in labor, we were brought here for labor.
Absolutely.
Right.
We've been working a long time.
So when anybody tries to test the stereotype that African Americans are lazy and we don't want to work, let them know that is totally false. We were brought over, we were robbed from our land and brought over here to work. We have worked and are still working. We built this country. We're steadily building this country and making great contributions to this country. And that's why I do like this Black History thing of African Americans and labor, because we need to really celebrate. We talked about that in another podcast, that celebrate your success, celebrate who you are, celebrate what you've done, celebrate the work you've done. And so, Will, if I can, you can dive in there. Like, what's your perspective when it comes to us and labor? And
it's
Black history.
It's definitely labor of love.
Okay.
The way I look at it, because, many occasions, work ethic is not really an issue in our community.
Mm-hmm.
We work hard. We've been working hard since the day we got here. And we haven't stopped working hard. It's just, I think there's a lot of frustration that's built up over the years because we don't feel like we're properly compensated for the work that we put out. So there's the number of studies that have been done that says, right now, Black women are the most educated demographic of people in the United States of America. Yet and still, they're on the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to the actual salaries that they receive for the work that they're putting out. So, of course, we might be right in front of them, but we still lag behind, other communities when it comes to what we get paid based on the work that we do in comparison to others. So I think that's where we sit right now. I think there's just a lot of frustration because we no longer have the complex of worrying about, are we good enough? We know we're good enough. We know we're better than in most situations. We have that confidence, but when you're not rewarded for the work that you put out, that creates some frustration, that creates some resentment, and that can lead to poor decision-making in certain things. That can lead to you not operating at your fullest potential because you're trying to figure out sometimes how to get everything you can out of a situation that won't give you anything back. So we have to do a better job, I think, of supporting each other. Because we all know we go through this in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Anyone who works for someone else or works for a corporation, your salary is subject to what somebody is willing to pay you. And that could be good or bad based on that situation. It may be very good starting out, and you may think you're in the best place ever. But as you're there and you're looking at the work going in versus the paycheck coming back out, you start to reevaluate things a little bit. You start to see, well, based on your contemporaries and the people that are doing what you're doing, well, man, I'm producing at a much higher rate and a much higher level, yet I'm not being compensated at that same rate that I feel like I should be. Now, when that happens, where do we turn? Where do we go? And this is key, but by being Black History Month, and of course we have a huge, undertaking right now, the removal of DEI and a lot of different programs and things that have come about that have been put in place to try to prevent some of the inequities that, of course, that we faced, in the workspace. But once again, we are resilient people.
That's right.
We are a group of thinkers. We are a group of planners. It's just we got to continue to take those steps and to figure out how we can empower each other even more. And that's where, for me, it always comes back to, some of the things that Carter G. Woodson talked about in Miseducation of the Negro and some of his other writings, where he spoke about how we're needed in every area in industry and things we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
Don't just be an athlete. Don't just be a reverend. Don't just be a financial advisor. We need you to be a doctor. We need you to be a dentist. We need you to be an attorney. And not just any kind of attorney, any kind of doctor. I don't want you to just be a general practitioner.
Right.
We need more heart surgeons, brain surgeons. We need more people with specific skill sets. Don't just be an attorney. Don't just fall into criminal defense, because that's the area we feel like we need help the most.
Yeah.
We need some estate planning attorneys. We need some corporate and tax and law attorneys. We need some people in a lot of different areas, because we need that, because our children need to see that, because that's where the ideas come from. You are what you see a lot of times.
Representation.
Exactly. So our kids need to see more people doing more things outside of the norm to know that, what, it is possible for me to do that. If I can see it, then I can believe it, then I can achieve it. A lot of times we just don't see it enough, in our communities, to create that inspiration. And we got to support that inspiration, that creativity in our kids by, maybe going to more college fairs, maybe, getting your kids out and taking them to, different organizations and, taking them to different museums. There used to be a lot of, social activity work I feel like was done, years ago. I don't see as much of that done now. Like I said, it may be happening. I don't see it as much. I don't know how often our kids, go to the different museums, and not just the Civil Rights Museum, but all of the museums, because our work is represented in all of them.
Around all of them. Yes.
It's just we're only highlighted in a very few of them. So just that representation, I think that'll help with the labor force, because there are a lot of jobs and opportunities that are out there that we just don't know exist.
That is true. That is true. That is true. And that's good, because the more knowledge you have, the better decisions that you can make.
Absolutely.
And that's what we strive to do here with Closing the Gap, is to bring more information so that people can make better decisions. But also during this Black History Month, with the theme being African American labor, we need to highlight different ways of working, different places that we have labored in and have been successful, and those persons that have been successful, so that our younger generation can realize that, oh, I can do that too. If I see it, then like you said, I can believe it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That's that song, right? I thought you were gonna go ahead and start singing. Singing, I believe I can fly, right?
No, I stay in my lane. Lord ain't blessed me with that gift.
No, but when you say that, I think about a young lady that by the name of Reverend Addie Wyatt, that was a trailblazer for African American women in the American Labor Union. And she worked closely with Dr. King in supporting him with the Montgomery bus boycott. But then also she was still alive and around when a young community organizer, Barack Obama, came to work around. And so having somebody that had been in the fight and doing the work from one generation to the next, right? She did her work in fighting for fair wages and things in meat packing plants in Chicago during the 1950s and for United Food Workers and things like that. And then was passionate with women's rights and worked along Dr. King. But then by the time Barack Obama comes around, he's able to lean in on her knowledge and wisdom as well. And so that's when you said representation and having access to different people that do the work, right? And that's why this theme is about African Americans and labor, because we want to celebrate the people that have done the work in our community. And there are many that are nameless.
Yes.
There are many that are nameless that have done work in the community. And that's why around Birmingham, Birmingham celebrates the foot soldiers a lot, right? Because there were so many of them that they weren't able to list all the names, but they knew that a lot of people came out and put their feet to the ground and marched on behalf of their people. And only they know, and only their families know. But when they just put that name foot soldier, they're saying that, hey, we recognize you. That while we may not know your name, we may not have seen you, but if you came out and participated in any way, shape, or form, we appreciate what you have done. So as we move forward throughout this Black History Month, what I would say that I would try to impress upon our listeners is that to take the time as we talk about planning, let's look at some plans to how we can put forth some labor work to build some more wealth in our community, right? That's something that we need to look at and identify, because like you said, we have a rolling back of DEI. Now, while that's true, the Civil Rights Act is still on the book. So we still have something we can lean on to make sure that we are not completely discriminated against, right? We still have something on the books legally that we can rely on. But what this also shows is that, like it always has been, you are going to only be able to advance through the work that you do.
Absolutely.
And the more companies and things that we establish for ourselves, the better off we will be.
Absolutely. Well, one thing I say, and I tell people, I said, until you can create your own opportunities, your community will never be free. Because, opportunities are there to be given, but you have to be in charge and have ownership in order to be able to give it. We don't own enough. We don't control enough. We're not the owners of enough different types of companies and businesses to be able to provide opportunities to our people to put them in a situation where we can have success so we can ultimately be free. So we're always chasing freedom, so-called in this country. We've been dying to be free for a long time. And even when they set us free, we really wasn't free. We was free to roam about, but they didn't give us our 40 acres and a mule. So we were still trying to figure it out, so we're struggling. So they always had the old adage of, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but if I ain't got no boots, how do I put them up? I ain't got no boots to put on. I'm still out here barefoot, so I'm always a day late and a dollar short. So for me, it's always been about, we need ownership. Ownership is the only thing that changes and can help level the playing field, because until we have ownership in every avenue of life that we live, we cannot provide the opportunities that our community seeks. So we're going to have some people that's going to be bold enough to step out on faith and take some chances and say, you know what? I'm a professional welder for Bradford and Gorey or some big company or whatever, right?
Right. Okay.
You know what? I may need to talk to someone about possibly getting, some financing. What would it look like for me to start my own welding company? That's a skill that everybody can't do, but it's going to always be in demand. Plumbers, electricians. We need people who own those companies in our community. So now we can start back getting the trade schools back open and sending our kids to trade school, because Toilets ain't going nowhere. You know, like I said, welders gonna always be needed. You know, electricians gonna always be there. You know, with technology becoming more and more popular, invading more and more of our lives, electricians gonna be more and more in demand because we're using more and more power.
Yeah.
So those skill sets are going to be always be necessary and needed. But we look around at how many electrician companies do we own? You know, plumbing companies, you know, welders, you got your builders, you got your trucking companies, your people who mix the concrete, your people who haul the concrete. You got somebody that does everything. So every industry out there, we need somebody to participate in, because until we can create ownership and have, in a situation where we can grant opportunities, we always going to be sitting around waiting for what's going to happen next, what rule are they going to change next, and how is that going to affect our employment? See, we always talk about, you know, the politics, and we always talk about the economics. And, you know, we are never in control of either one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at some point in time, we got to say, look here, they ain't going to really give us control of the politics the way we would like. They constantly rolling things back, changing things. We don't have enough economic power to evoke change politically, because that's where your political changes come from, with people who cut checks. So we ain't cutting enough checks. So if we can't cut checks to change things politically, in my opinion, we have to look at saying, okay, what can we do? I started my own business. You started your own business. Okay, how many people do you employ? You got people that cut in your shop. You got people that have cut in your shop for the last 20 years that I know that I've been covered through that. You know, I have a number of other advisors that work with my company in various places. You know, we need more people to have businesses, but we got to support those businesses. Our community has to support those businesses. So now, if your daughter wants to become a financial advisor, you know a financial advisor she can come talk to. My son wants to be a barber. Okay, I know a barber that he can come train and learn from.
Correct.
You know, we need more of those. We need more of those attorneys to be able to provide some internships for our kids. We need more of those doctors that have their own, you know, practices that they can bring our kids into, so they can see them, mimic them, watch them, learn from them, because we don't have enough of those mentors that can provide opportunities. So we got mentors.
Right.
But how many mentors can actually provide an opportunity? You can't provide opportunity unless you have ownership. So I'm going to always push the envelope a little bit and want us to go further and be better. Even though we're great as a people, we are doing a good job, but I always want us to be better. You know, I'm never satisfied. I'm always hungry. You know, I'm learning to be content but not complacent. So we're always on the fight to do more and be better. And in Black History Month, I think the greatest thing that we can do is strive for more and be better, because we're not fighting the same fight that, you know, our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents fought. We ain't got dogs sick on us the same way. We don't have, you know, people coming snatching us out of our homes the way the KKK was doing, you know, years back. You hear about the stories of,
Ain't careful, they gonna get that though.
you know, yeah, either you
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
things like that don't happen at the same rate anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not dealing with the same level of disrespect as those generations prior. We don't have the same struggles. Now, we still have struggles,
Correct.
but we don't have the same struggles. Well, what am I going to do? What is going to be my legacy that I leave to the next generation? Because every generation prior has left us in a better position. We got to look ourselves in the mirror and say, okay, well, we have been given this opportunity. Are we going to allow things to go back to what they used to? Or are we going to take what's in front of us right now, use the laws, use the opportunities to put us in a better position? Because one thing about God I know and I've understand and I've come to learn and love is that he told you, I'm going to always give you a way out.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm going to always give you a way to flee the temptation. So in life, there's always a way for something to be done. He ain't say the way was going to be easy. He didn't say it wasn't going to be troublesome. It wasn't going to be tough. You weren't going to have roadblocks and wasn't going to be some barriers in front of you. But there's always a way.
That's right.
So while we have a lot of challenges in front of us because things have been, we've had a lot of redlining and discriminatory banking practices and not be having access to funding the way a lot of communities have had it, but we still got some access. Some access is better than no access. And guess what? If we come together enough and enough of us pool our resources together, we would have enough to go out to be able to get started, to start the build. Now, you may not be competing against the major corporations they want. But guess what? We're looking at finished products that have come about for them over the last 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. We're not looking at them in their beginning stages. We're in our infancy as a people from an economic standpoint. So what we have to do is understand that, compartmentalize that, and don't allow that to paralyze us for not moving forward, because we're comparing ourselves against someone who's had a 400-year head start.
Yeah.
So we have to take the bull by the horns and look at things and say, I want my kids to be in a better situation than what I was in. And we want to build, we want to evoke change, and we're going to be proud to do that for the next generation. See you back in a second.
All right, welcome back to Closing the Gap, Truth About Black Wealth, where I am Eddie Richardson, your co-host, here with our host, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton, the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, and we're celebrating Black History Month. As we said, theme for this month for Black History for this year is African American labor, and we've been started out talking about marriage and two being better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. In this last segment, you know what I'm saying, we talked about how we need to stick together and build, and, you know what I'm saying, touched on a plethora of things when it comes to African Americans and how we've labored. And now we want to dive into where do we go from here. You touched on some of those things, Will, but at the close of the last segment, before we went to commercial, about ownership.
Yes.
You know, and that's what we need now. And so what I want to talk about a little bit as we go into that, as we look at ownership, it realized that to build something takes time.
Yes.
Nothing happens overnight. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Nothing happens instant. Well, it can happen in a vacuum, but it doesn't happen instantly, right? And as a matter of fact, we want you to stick in a vacuum. And what we mean by that is when you have an idea that you see that could possibly be something that's built, we want you to take the time, study, and validate that business idea. You talked about, Will, on the last segment about how we're going to need those plumbers and different trades and different people in different, not only trades, but also doctors, lawyers that specialize in something, that they're not general practitioners in what they do, but they have a specialty in what they do. And so as you define your specialty and what you will do, and whatever that is, we want you to take the time to do the study, to do the research, validate your business idea. I'm going to say that again, validate your business idea. How do you do that? Well, number one, and we talked about last week about politicians and their responsibility. And so when we talk about local politicians, also state politicians and the government, politicians, that federal politicians, they have certain dictums that they are bringing down the line. They have every administration that comes into the president or into your state house or into the cities that we live in, they have certain dictums that they are trying to outline and get done, right? And when we say that, what we're saying is that there are certain places that they are going to put the money to get work done.
Absolutely.
And so it is up to us to identify those things of where they're going to be spending the money, and then see where we align with those things that they are planning to get done. Where will we be advantageous to do the work? What type of business can we build to be able to take advantage of that opportunity? Right. And it is through those things that we will be able to build wealth and close the wealth gap. It's through those things. And when we talk about being patient, think about the story of A. Philip Randolph. You know, he's one of the great architects of the marches on Washington, and very key person when we talk about Black history.
Absolutely.
And A. Philip Randolph, he organized Pullman porters, and he organized unions in that way for African Americans. And as I was reading the story, it said that it took him 10 years to get the Pullman porters organized. 10 years, right? You think about the patience that it takes. to stay in one thing for that long.
Oh yeah.
You know, never giving up, right? And too often we have an idea that we see an opportunity, we see a need within our community, and then as we start working on it, we give up too soon because we say we ain't sticking together. I can't get enough folks on my side. Well, I'm sure A. Philip Randolph had the same issue.
Yeah.
That for over those 10 years, there were a lot of no's that he got. There were a lot of his own people that told him, man, what are you doing? You wasting your time. Go find something else to do. And so what we need to do is, number one, we talked about it in other episodes, and we're going to continue to press it. You got to pray.
Absolutely.
You got to stick with God. You got to be in tune with God, because when God lays on your heart to get something done, you have to have what I would just say, some stick-to-itiveness.
Yes.
To get it done. You have to stay consistent at that thing. And the only way you can stay consistent in it is relying on the power of God, because other people will come and they will try to deter you and distract you from your mission. So you have to have a clearly defined vision. You have to have a clearly defined mission to get that work done. And as we move forward, we want you to validate the business, take the time to do the work, look at it, and then also we have to seek some financing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
In what we're trying to do. And because all of it takes money. Because as you said earlier, the money moves politics.
Absolutely.
Right? But in order for us to have the money to move the politics, we have to go and talk to the politicians and see where they're placing the money.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? That's something that we got to address.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you got to have the faith to move mountains. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, like I said, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a lonely road. It's funny. I look up and I'm doing that for 20 years. It don't feel like it's been that long, but I've been in financial services for 20 years now. And, I feel like I'm just now making some headway, even though I've been at it for 20 years. So, patience is a virtue. You definitely learn that. And of course, if God is giving that vision, he must bring it to pass. So having that strong faith, like we talked about, and that faith that's going to move mountains, just believing that things are going to work out the way God said they're going to work out. So you got to have that, and to continue to divine, your skill set. Because the Lord has told us, a man's skill in his works will be placed before great men. So the Lord has told you everything you need to know to get it done, everything you need to get done. But you got to have the passion to stick to it, that stick-to-itiveness you're talking about. You got to have that in order to grow, in order to be successful. And the right people are going to be aligned with you as long as you stay on the right path. The problem is when we start getting off path and we start wanting to take shortcuts and we start wanting to do things that are not in alignment with what God is doing, because we're worried about how he going to bless us with that finance. Mm-hmm. We're worried about how is the money going to happen. And God said, look, I've already taken care of that. Just do what I've told you to do. And sometimes we can get too caught up with not having the support that we feel like we deserve, and we allow that to deter us. And in my learning of, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, you got to expect that. Because once you committed your life to Christ, we already know the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So he's going to try to do that in every way, shape, form, or fashion. Now, if you got a vision that God has gave you for your business and what you're trying to accomplish, well, guess who's going to be your biggest adversary in that? Mm-hmm. It's going to be the devil. Mm-hmm. And he's going to come to steal, kill, and destroy. That's not just the people around you, but that's your mindset. That's your patience. That's your vision. He's going to do everything to deter you, because if you stay on that path, you're going to be able to be a blessing and bring value and so much vision to so many people outside of just you. So the devil's saying, look, if I can stop you, that's going to stop thousands, potentially millions of people that benefit from what you do. So a lot of times when you look at it like that, you can think back, you know what, man, I'm that important. Man, the devil trying to stop me because of what I'm going to do for somebody else. So when you start to take a different perspective and a different vantage point, it helps you to kind of keep things in perspective a little bit. To kind of keep pushing forward, because what God has gave you ain't just for you. It's for so many people around you. And we live in a day and time where we need more people to take that step to operate off of faith the way we used to. Some of us have gotten away from it. Some of us have even recategorized and renamed it. We don't even call it faith no more. they come out with stuff called The Secret and, Attract and Think and, no. That ain't number God.
Mm-hmm.
He says, seeking you shall find, asking that door shall be open. So, knocking it shall be open. I'm sorry. You have not because you ask not. Well, have you had a conversation with God to ask?
Yeah.
And I've learned if you ask him a question, he's going to give you the answer. We just don't like the answer that he gives us because sometimes that answer comes along with, you got to work and do this. You got to put some time in and do that. You got to get educated and do that. You got to, you got to save a little more so you can have more in the bank. So when you go to the bank, they can see you've handled your money successfully. You've been diligent and faithful what God has given you. So those are lessons that I've had to learn. I got to be a better steward so he can provide me with more to be a steward over. So I can't go ahead and ask the Lord for, grant me this business loan for $1 million to help build my business if he see me mismanaging the money that I got.
Right.
Because if I get the $1 million business loan, he said, look, all you're going to do is destroy yourself and everybody around you because you ain't going to be using the money for what you got to use it for. Because that loan is just that, it's a loan. It got to be paid back with interest. So that money has to go to things that's going to build up the business, build up the community, and build up what he has called me to do, because then he'll give me the ability to pay that loan back tenfold. But we got to have that patience. We got to have that understanding, and we got to have that stick-to-itiveness to make sure that we're following through on that plan and we're holding ourselves accountable by doing so. So we can't worry about who's not supporting us, because he's already told you, if the world is against you, as long as you got me on your side, you are the majority. So we got to walk by faith.
Yeah.
Now, I think we want to believe that only in certain situations. We want to believe it when it's convenient. But I'm a firm believer that that's true, and actually the most true in business. Because there are going to be times when you're misunderstood, when you're misrepresented, when you're underrepresented, and you're going to try to well, how am I going to get this done? God's saying, look, don't worry about how. If you be faithful, if you be diligent, if you work to be the best that you can possibly be, we've always learned that somebody's always watching. So at some point in time, somebody's going to give you a chance, not because they may have even wanted to give you a chance, but God placed it on their heart to give you a chance for whatever reason. It ain't your job to worry about what that person went through in that day and time that made them have a come to Jesus moment and say, you know what? Brother Richardson deserves this loan to expand XYZ. You know what? I'm going to approve this for him today. God did that. That ain't got nothing to do with us. We just need that stamp of approval so we can move forward what God said that he going to do for us. So we got to move that way. And I think a lot of times we spend so much time trying to figure out how things are going to happen versus doing our part, working to make sure that we're in a position to where if they do happen, we can be successful with whatever God has given us. So I meet a lot of people in business. They're so caught up in looking like they got it all together versus making sure that when the business opportunity finally comes to them, they can execute and deliver the opportunity to give them more opportunities. See, people get caught up in business and want to be like, you know what? I want to do the marketing. I want to have a beautiful building. I want to have the beautiful signage, and I want to have all this beautiful stuff. I want the lights, camera, action. But can you execute the job when the client walks through the door? Have you spent all your money looking good on the style, but you ain't got no substance? So we got to focus on the substance of things. We got to make sure we have the substance, because if we go out and we get blessed with the loan and then we don't have the substance to support the loan, then we've just acquired more debt. And now we're just putting ourselves and our families in a deeper hole, because we all know most bad decisions come because a person is in a bad financial predicament. Most people in jail are not necessarily innately bad people.
Right.
They made a decision more than likely based on an economic condition that they were under at that time. They feel like this was the best way for me to get out of this economic pressure that I was under. So if we can help remove some of that economic pressure by making better decisions, being more diligent, and not having the wrong thing be the main thing. So we worry about the car we gonna buy when we get the money versus the legacy that we gonna build when we receive it.
Okay.
So
that's excellent. That's excellent. So having our focus on God, having our focus on him, Basically, write the vision and make it plain. Submit it to him. Let him guide us. And once we do that, then we'll be able to have the faith and the strength to know that, okay, God is going to see me through so that I can see this vision
Absolutely.
through, because I have taken that time with him first and foremost. Too many times, like you said, focus on what's being seen, but really the real work always happens behind closed doors.
Exactly.
It always happens behind closed doors. We wonder why when people show up and you're like, man, who is that? How did they get there? Well, yeah, those are valid questions because you didn't see how much prayer they put in. You didn't see how much sacrifice they put in. That's always an issue when it comes to success. Success is attractive, but you don't know how much sacrifice goes into success because you don't see a person's sacrifice. You only see their success.
Exactly.
Because the sacrifice usually happens behind closed doors. The sacrifice is not what's attractive. And the sacrifice is not something that we talk about because we're too busy making the sacrifices to talk about them because we're trying to get to success. So we can't fault those persons that don't tell you about their sacrifices because they're making those and they don't even realize how many sacrifices they're making because they're striving to get to that point of success. They're striving to build. Yeah, and while you're building, you don't have time to talk.
No, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So those are things, the art of delayed gratification, everybody wants it right now. I mean, and we've all been guilty of it to a certain extent. So it's all things that we all work on. It's things that I'm working on a day-to-day basis. And why I tell people, you got to die daily to your flesh.
That's it.
Because if you don't die daily to your flesh is going to tell you, I want the here and now. I don't care about, the greater tomorrow. We want to benefit now from everything that we're doing, and that's not the way that you're going to be successful and be successful long term. For me, it's about legacy. I think every business owner needs to take a step back and say, is it more important for me to live good or my kids to live great and my great-grandkids to live great? That's the goal. If I do this thing the right way, I want to affect and change the people's lives that I would never come into contact with. That should be the goal because, of course, a righteous man leaves inheritance to his children's children. I'm trying to make sure the children's children receive the inheritance.
That's right.
But if I'm so busy trying to do any and everything for me, there will be nothing left for them. So the children's children will know nothing about me. So we got to have a shifting in the mindset. We have to become a little bit less selfish. And it's hard to do in a world that's become extremely selfish. This is an extremely selfish, materialistic, and self-centered world we live in. But be not conformed to this world, yet be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We got to all come back to the same thing at the end of the day. We got to be renewed and understand that just because the world is operating this way, it doesn't mean I have to operate this way. Because all too often in business, people say, well, they doing this and they're unethical and they're this and they're that. Well, don't worry about what they're doing. Be so consumed with what you're doing that what they doing ain't going to affect you. Be so tied up in becoming great, because one thing about life is that I can promise you, money is attracted to greatness. So if you are great in whatever area God has gifted you in, and you are taking the time to hone in on that skill set, whether it be being the greatest electrician, being the greatest plumber, being the greatest barber, being the greatest financial advisor, being the greatest attorney, whatever that is, money is going to be attracted to that gift. The money is going to find you. So I would say it's passion over profit. If you got your passion in the right place and you're chasing greatness, then everything else is chasing you. My dad told me, he told me that when it came to women a long time ago, he said, look here, you never lose women. You lose women, you lose money chasing women, but you never lose women chasing money. So as long as you chasing greatness and you chasing after the right things, the other things that you seek and desire going to be chasing you. So when it comes to a business standpoint, if you chasing becoming the greatest at your given skill set, your given career path, all the other things, and God didn't told us that, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and everything else
is going
to
be added unto you.
So we make this thing real complicated when it's really very simple.
Yeah. And the distractions
Absolutely.
is what gets us, right? Especially now in this climate, and that's why it's important to stay focused, right? And I thank Carter G. Woodson for giving us a focus, giving you a week, and then now it's a month to focus on you and focus on the things that we need to do for us as a people. So as we go forward for the rest of this month, we want all of our listeners and those that support the podcast and to continue to remember what we tell you. Write your plan, make it plain, stick to that. Don't let any other distractions or what's going on in the media, in the news, get you off of what God wants you to do. Because what God has implanted within you, we need that in this community.
Absolutely.
And not only do we need it, but if God planted it in you, God desires for it to grow and bear fruit for him as well. God wants to see the fruits of your labor. God wants to receive a reward from what you do. So during this Black History Month, let us continue to labor and labor for the goodness and the righteousness of God as we work to build our community and close the wealth gap between us and everybody else. See you next time.